Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Faisal Raza and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, since Afghan Taliban de facto rule, women and girls are in shackles, what UN characterize as gender apartheid. Taliban shut doors of education, jobs, health, active participation in politics and nation building for Afghan girls and women. 1.5 million Afghan girls are deprived of education. 60,000 women affected by ban on jobs and overall employment. Recently held United Nations talks on Afghanistan in Qatar. No women activists were allowed to participate in that mood. No female voice was there in the Afghan delegation. UN bodies and the Human Rights Watch criticized it and termed it as shocking. UN Under Secretary General Rosemary DiCarlo made it clear on Taliban that women must be included in public life. But Taliban responded, it's their internal affair. On the other hand, Afghan Taliban focus is on using proxy in neighboring countries for terrorism. But facts are that 90% to 95% of the people are in dire need of assistance, the humanitarian assistance. They are living below poverty line, don't have food. 19% to 38% of the children are involved in child labor. These are the horrible facts of Afghanistan, as the Afghan population direly need the support of their interim regime. To discuss this very important issue of humanitarian nature, we have in our studios Hassan Khan. He is the senior journalist. Most welcome to you, Hassan. Thank you very much for your time. We have Ms. Fajer, Rabia, Pasha. She is the women rights activist. Most welcome to you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ji.
And online joining us from Spain, Dr. Malik Hammad Lang. He is the human rights educationist. Most welcome to you, Dr. Ahmad. Thank you very much for your time online. My first question is to you, Hassan, that recent United Nations report suggests that more than 1,600 grave human rights violations, including inhuman treatment and torture to girls, children, human rights activists, journalists, doctors and others were reported in Afghanistan. Your thoughts?
Look, Faisal, first thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. Look, Faisal, I think as far as Afghanistan is concerned, so you can, as for the human rights violation is concerned, you can just take an example that almost 50% of its population is under, is what we call it, what the UN call it as gender apartheid in Afghanistan. Women, it is not only the 2-point-something million Afghan girls, it is almost 21 million Afghan women who are discriminated, who are being treated differently, not as even, I think, subhuman, considered to be the subhuman. So I think I was just stunned. You also referred to Rosemary DiCarlo's statement yesterday when she was just shedding the crocodile tears over the way women are being discriminated in Afghanistan. You know, when she was the host of yesterday Doha 3 in Qatar, and it was she and her organization who surrendered to the Taliban's demands and their wishes, refused women representation in the conference.
Especially the women activists who want to participate
women
in
representation
that.
from even, and two, it was the UN body which accepted the Taliban demand that at this forum, Afghanistan internal issues will not be discussed. No women rights issue, no human rights issue, no discrimination with the opposition, and things like what you call it inclusive government. These shall not be discussed on that forum. So I think I was quite stunned by the way the UN behaved, especially at Doha 3, and they gave a full opportunity to the Taliban representative to defend themselves or to project themselves as the savior of Afghan people, as the only available force in Afghanistan who can keep Afghanistan intact, who can ensure the entire security in the entire Afghanistan, and who can eradicate or who can eliminate what you call it the narcotics things in Afghanistan. So I think it was a very golden opportunity for Afghans to have a PR exercise with the international communities, Doha 3. On the other side, as you mentioned, these are just reports which are being reported.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. This is a tip of an iceberg.
Yes.
It is a country, I think, if you ask
ground
any
realities
Afghan,
are entirely different.
If you ask any Afghan women, Afghan men, and he belonged to any strata of society, not necessarily he's a Pashtun, he's a Tajik, he's an Uzbek, he's a Hazara, he's a Sunni, or he's a what you call it.
It is not restricted to ethnicity or religious beliefs.
Any strata of society, you ask him, and he will tell you that we are living in a hell. And it is a graveyard piece, what you call it, the silence of a graveyard inside Afghanistan. So I think the UN is the only body to which I think the Afghans have, from which the Afghans have certain expectations definitely to take care of, because UN represent almost the entire humanity at the moment.
And they have almost good access to the Afghan,
definitely
authority as
yes,
well, and all of them.
They have, especially two bodies have direct access. One is the US, which is feeding the Afghan Taliban. They are giving Afghan Taliban almost $6 billion
overtly or covertly.
Yes, overtly or covertly, that's another matter. And another is the UN. And this Doha 3 was I think was orchestrated or was being done by these two organizations, the US and the UN, because US was more prominent mostly at the Doha process. So I think these were the two bodies towards which Afghans are looking, and unfortunately I personally believe that they have disappointed the Afghans.
And definitely, you are absolutely right, because these two bodies, even the United States and the UN, they are making lots of statements but not asserting pressure on Afghan Taliban actually to adhere that. Ms. Fajer, how you analyze the situation since 2021, because as Afghan Taliban restricted women to wail into at home, doors of education, job, health, active participation into the nation building were completely shut on them, and Afghanistan becomes the first ever country where there is no education beyond the primary level.
Yes.
So how do you see that this situation, is there any improvement in future, or there would be nothing?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, of course, the situation since 2021 have really deteriorated, especially in the first year. We saw that a lot of people were trying to leave Afghanistan, a lot of women, especially women activists who were very actively involved in sort of community engagement and community development. A lot of women who were working for non-profit organizations, NGOs, who were heading NGOs. So as you know, everything was basically banned and shut down, and people were trying to, women particularly, were trying to leave because of the fear for their life. And we've seen that their political participation is no more. You see their economic participation is no more. And like you said, there is no education participation beyond primary education as well. So that is, of course, you see, that means that, if we just look at these last few years since they've been there, we know that women have been pushed back further. So whenever, and we don't know how long it will take before things will actually start to improve, you have actually pushed back a whole generation who will never have access to opportunities.
Obviously.
So that is something, very disturbing. And that is something very actually we need very concerning, because from women's rights point of view, I think from the point of education for girls particularly, and without giving education to our girls, we cannot build nations. And Afghanistan is an important country for Pakistan because of its geographical location, and of course what happens in Pakistan has a direct impact on in Pakistan, and we see sort of with the Afghan refugees in Pakistan, we see how that happens, and how Pakistan has very
definitely whatever happening in Afghanistan, that ultimately affects Pakistan, no doubt about that.
It is in Pakistan's interest for Pakistan to also raise these issues, because if we can improve the situation, or if we can help improve the situation in Afghanistan, especially when it comes to women, it will in the future.
Yeah, definitely. That's why we are much concerned what is happening in Afghanistan. So, Dr. Malik Ahmad, how you categorize another UN report which actually elaborates that since 2021 there had been at least 800 instances of extrajudicial killings, 218 deaths in custody, over 144 cases of torture, and 14 enforced disappearances of former government employees and security personnel, and their widows and half widows are living in very miserable life. How do you see this?
Thank you, Faisal, first of all, bringing this, like important issue back, at least for Pakistan, back to the main screen. Because, the Western world, United Nations, after the war in Europe between Ukraine and Russia, and then they have war in Middle East. So the country like Afghanistan, the region like South Asia, it goes quite behind. And this is what we have seen. For instance, Hassan, talks about the UN, managed talks in Doha, and the outcome of that is nothing. I mean, it's 3 days talk, and there is nothing talking about the human rights abuses in Afghanistan, and they did not even talk about the report which they published by themselves. So, what kind of authenticity and what kind of recognition the United Nations has in this world? Though, although we have talked about a lot about the importance and the role of United Nations after the Gaza, like atrocities, that it seems quite, hard. I'm sitting in Europe, and the Europe, is more into the Ukraine-Russian war because there is energy crisis. There are a couple of other crises due to this war. So they are more focused in that part of the world instead of, like Afghans. And the world where, because I'm a human rights, so I'm going to talk about the human rights perspective of the whole, wars. Recently, there is an Institute of Economics and Peace. They issue, every year Global Peace Index, and they mentioned, it is just 2 weeks ago, the report came out, and in that report they mentioned that today's world there are more countries engaging into wars either directly or indirectly after the World War II. So it means that the situation of the wars in the world, it has been deteriorating, and it has been increasing a lot of direct violence. It is not the structural violence. As you just mentioned, the facts about the Afghan people's situation in Afghanistan under the Taliban. I mean, if I would be a, like a realist, it is the same thing happens when some, like change of government as the Taliban took over, in that way. This is what the opponent of the previous government and now in the government do to their opponents. But the thing is, what was the purpose of having Doha talks of United Nations? Didn't they need to have the human rights in front? And the misery is, like the last statement from the Hezbollah, Zabiullah,
It looks that Doha talks have no purpose when they have not discussed the main issue from which actually the Afghan citizens are suffering. So this is basically unfortunate. United Nations Human Rights Council's 56th session, Dr. Ahmad, on June 18th, 2024, Mr. Richard Bennett, UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Afghanistan, in his remarks and report, he found that the Taliban's institutionalized system of gender oppression, established and enforced through severity of violations against the women and girls in Afghanistan, might amount to crimes against humanity. How do you see that, and what's your thoughts?
I mean, like this is what I was telling, that the Afghan, spokesperson at the end stated that we would see what UN gonna bring for the next meeting. We are not saying that yes, we're gonna participate in any UN dialogue in future. So how confident and strong they were, like openly stating that no, I mean, it is not on our, like we are not their slaves, or we are not, driven by them to accept whatever they're gonna bring regarding human rights in particular. As you mentioned now, Pakistan, like in Afghanistan, I was just looking at the OCHA's report, and it is stating that for education, they need $140 million for Afghan people, but they received only 40%, $40 million. But on the other hand, if you look at the SIPRI, Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, they just released the report, and they stated that the world has spent $4,000 billion in 1 year on military expenditures. $4,000 billion, imagine. And then for the education in one country of 40 million, they are depriving of the education because they could not get full funding. So once you have that kind of, and same with the food and security and emergency shelter, if once you have that kind of situation, and the world's, responses towards the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, I mean, the situation would be worsening in future. And this is what the report of OCHA, this is what the report of Human Rights Watch, talks about Afghanistan, that it has been deteriorating since Taliban took over, and then, the issues, how it would be solved when the United Nations Forum could not bring to the humanitarian crisis at least at pause, even if not
Yeah,
finished.
definitely. You are absolutely right, Dr. Ahmad, absolutely right. Hassan, how do you see Taliban's behavior in first time attended the third UN talks on Afghanistan in Qatar, without women representation, no commitment given on human rights, no commitment even sought by the UN, remained silent on women and girls' participation, their empowerment and fundamental rights, like education and all, and when asked, Taliban termed it an internal matter. So is it an internal matter when the people are actually suffering in Afghanistan because of lots of reasons, and unfortunately there is a torture, there is an extrajudicial killing, there is the killings in custody, there are enforced disappearances, children are suffering, child labor is at the high pace. So how do you see that? Is it an internal matter? Why they are seeking international assistance?
Look, I think Taliban seem to be the spoiled child of the world, and especially of the US. Let me say that, look, this Doha 3 agenda. Doha 3 was a very important meeting of that Doha process. Initially, it was in a way not that attractive, and especially when this SU was involved, when the Istanbul process, when the Moscow process began. So Doha 3 gone into a back burner. However, to keep this itself relevant, the UN and the US tried to just keep this process on. So Doha first, Doha second. Doha first, Taliban were not invited. Doha second, they say we will not attend unless it is on our terms and conditions. So in Doha 3, they were not there. Doha 2, they were not there. In Doha 3, UN has accepted all their demands. What the agenda was set by the Taliban. So I think it seems like that the world was just waiting for Taliban. Please
and
come on.
relinquish what
Please
they have,
come on.
what UN has.
They didn't care for the situation in Afghanistan. At least they should have even the security report, the terror syndicates which are currently operating from Afghanistan, as you mentioned in your statement also. It was not there. Human rights were not there. Women issues were not there. Education, girls, etc. Nothing. Opposition, inclusive government, etc. Nothing was there on the agenda. On the agenda, there were 2 items which were of Taliban's demand. There were 2 agenda items. One, the financial system are linking the Afghan banking system with the international network. How to do it? So it was definitely for the Taliban's interest. They want the international community to unfreeze their freezed amount, 1, and 2, get us connected with the international monetary system. So this was their demand. And the second was eliminations or eradication of this poppy
cultivation,
poppy crops, etc. So
and there should be some alternative
to that. It is the only things which Talibans are projecting to the world from Taliban 1 and Taliban 2, that look, we are the only people, we are the only force who can eliminate poppy from the country, and no other have done it. So these 2 items.
So there is no difference between 1996 Taliban and now 2024
I think as for practically, they may be speaking good English, they may be very properly dressed, etc. But one thing which I want to say here is that Afghans as a nation, whether it is Taliban or non-Talibans, they are very good in diplomacy, and they are very good in disarming their opponents once they are there. They have a very broad smile on their faces when they talk, and you might have interacted.
Yeah, definitely.
I being from there, I think I know.
They are having the good diplomatic skills.
The good diplomatic skills. So once they were at the Doha 3 table, look, all were happy, and everybody was just anxiously awaiting, despite the fact that a low level delegation was sent, because when when Kabul knew that the Secretary General of the UN is not coming to the conference, and it will be represented by the this Assistant Secretary General Rosemary DiCarlo. So instead of sending initially, which they agree, Amir Khan Muttaqi was the foreign minister, they just sent their spokespersons, Zabiullah Mujahid. A very junior level delegation was sent to and despite that, all the 22 representatives of different countries, they were just waiting to have an interaction with Zabiullah Mujahid, and he was charming like
means the thing is that interim Afghan authority just pitched what they want, and UN has nothing demanded from the Afghan
neither the
authority.
US, neither the UN has anything on the table which say it was the world demand. The words are three major demands: women rights issues, human rights issues, inclusive of government, and human rights violation, etc. And nothing was there on the table. So the two items which were for the Taliban PR exercise, marketing exercise, so they were included on the agenda, and all 23 including
It is another story that the United States, Thomas White was there, and unfortunately when the US was there, and that was the place, Doha was the place where the Doha agreement was done with Taliban, and that inclusive government and the human rights, women, girl rights, juvenile rights, and all of them, that was mentioned in that Doha agreement, but unfortunately
nothing was there on the
US
table.
has not pressed them.
So only two subjects which are of Taliban interest.
Yeah, definitely, it's unfortunate. So Fajer, UN talks on Afghanistan were without women participation, and it was no doubt severely criticized as UN Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. They termed it deeply concerned that why the women were excluded from that thing, and why even the Human Rights Watch described it as really shocking movement. So how do you see that world human rights organizations, overall the European Union, lots of other entities, they are time and again stressing upon that these must have to be met. Otherwise, there would be no recognition at least to the de facto Afghan authority. So why they are not adhering international voices?
I think it's a very interesting situation if you look at it, because when we talk about US and Europe, they're very much used to getting their way.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
So I mean, I think that's one thing, and I think Taliban are on the other side are persistent that they will, they're not there to listen to anyone. They will do as they wish to do, and they will do what they feel is important for them. So, for example, with the agenda, they said this is what we need, this is what we want to talk about. And
at least what happened in Doha, it looks like that.
That's what happened, exactly. So I think that's something, so I think there's rigid attitude on that side. I think on the other side, for example, when I work, I think one of the things that my own sort of theory of change at times is, especially when it comes to difficult situations like this, that it is important to engage.
Obviously.
So unless we engage, we cannot move forward and sort of put forward our agendas. So I think that is something, and that may have been a thought at UN's part. I'm not defending UN at all, but I think that may have been a thought, because like you said, everybody was so desperate to meet them and to listen to them and to talk to them.
So what sort of a thought? Means that they want to engage with Taliban at least, and then pitch what actually they want.
Exactly. I mean, of course, eventually you see, the thing is, Afghanistan need the financial support. Without the financial support, we know that the country is suffering, the people are suffering, the poverty rate is very high, unemployment rate is very, very high.
But do you think when they will have some sort of support, the financial support, they are going to adhere something or?
I think we should look at it positively, in the sense that we need to keep pushing the agenda. I think that's very important. We'll keep doing that. We keep raising our voice. The global community has really, really been sort of strong about the women and girls situation in Afghanistan. So I think that is something very positive. I think we need to take that positively. Yes, the issues that we have currently in Afghanistan, they may not be addressed immediately. It will take its time, but I think we need our patience. But we can't stop on the agenda that we are at the moment. I think that's something very, very important.
Okay.
And just to explain, just to give you an example, that a couple of years back, once the new interim government had come, I had a discussion at Ministry of Education in Afghanistan, and the question I asked is how we can help and support so we can get the education started for girls. And it may have been their diplomacy, but their reason was that we are not happy with the curriculum that Americans have left, and we want to review that curriculum because we don't want our girls to be so we want that curriculum to be changed, and it's a slow process and will take time. It's been quite some time now though. So that is something I think
men are taught the same curriculum then.
Yes, no, of course we say that. Yes, absolutely. I mean, of course our stance is that if men can have the same curriculum, why girls should not be offered the same curriculum and offered the same opportunities as men. But I think that is something very,
definitely,
it's something that we got to keep pushing. I think we are in a situation, it's like a catch-22 because poverty rate is very high.
Yes.
The country needs that financial support. If the international community doesn't come in with that support, then people are suffering as well, and women suffer more.
Yeah, definitely.
So women suffer, always suffer more when we have disasters, when you have situations, we have wars like this. It's always the women and children who suffer the most. So it's important to improve the economic situation of the country and push for the girls.
It's okay, Fajer. What's your opinion on International Rescue Committee (IRC) report warned that 90% of the Afghan population lives under poverty line.
Yes.
95% of the Afghans don't have enough food to eat, while women leading the households are 100% deprived of food. What's going on?
Well, that shows the seriousness of situation on ground, and I can assure you that a lot of time these surveys and these reports don't actually really evidence the actual situation that is happening. So that means
might have the sampling of some restricted areas, but they don't have access to.
What I mean is that the poverty rates are very, very high, and that is very, very, it's very difficult because of course that has an impact on your health, on your nutrition, on everything that
Obviously.
and I suppose that and it's a global sort of issue. When it comes to girls and women, whenever there is an issue, whenever there's a disaster, whenever a pandemic hits, for example, whenever there's poverty, it's the women and girls who suffer the most, because it's always, when it comes to food security, for example, it's a common phenomena that the man has to eat first, and then the woman will eat whatever is left over.
Right.
If the meat is cooked, the woman will probably get just the salad or the soup, and the man will eat the meat.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are very unfortunate.
It's unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate.
No balance there.
No balance there. So, it's very important.
Asian phenomenon.
It's an Asian phenomenon.
Unfortunate Asian phenomenon.
But and this is why I think from global perspective, it's very important to improve the economic situation of Afghanistan, because it's the women and children who will suffer the most because of the situation there.
And most of the women are actually very sacrificing. We have to admit that.
Yeah, they have to. There is no alternative for them.
Definitely.
But
There is
it's
no
very
alternative,
interesting.
by nature,
But
by nature as well. So, if you want to say,
Structured
I
like
just wanted to say it's very interesting comparison. I do a lot of work with Afghan girls and women in Pakistan, and the Afghan girls and women that came pre-Taliban, who've been here for decades, there are different people,
Yes.
very different people. The people who have come now after Taliban takeover are very different women. They're much stronger, they have strong voices, they're much more educated, even if they're not educated, they're very aware of their rights. So I think right now it must be a very frustrating situation for them, because when you have no awareness and you are submissive,
yes,
because you've been raised like that, you don't, I think you ignore a lot of problems around you. You'll give up, you sacrifice. But when you have a lot more awareness and you're educated, at that point it becomes very, very
definitely.
difficult.
You are absolutely right. Hassan, be brief on that. Why Taliban interim authority is much focused on suppressing its population rather than having welfare over there. Their fundamental rights, and unfortunately They are much busy in using their proxies for terrorism into the other countries, including Pakistan. Why they are not focusing on alleviating hunger? With 3.2 million acute malnutrition children. Why more than 8,40,000 of the pregnant and nursing women are there, and elderly people are suffering because of the non-availability of the humanitarian assistance. So why they are not focusing people, their own people?
Look, Faisal, I think that the problem doesn't lie in the stars. The fact is that most of the Amarat-e-Islami leadership, they are drawn from the extreme rural areas, away from the urban structures and the urban cultures, etc. One, two, their interpretation of Islam is totally different from the interpretation of Sharia, what we are doing, what the rest of the world is doing. They believe everything is in the hands of God. Food, it is your, what you call it, kismat. It is your destiny. When you will die, it will be decided by the God, the destiny. You don't have anything to do. So if you die today, you will die today.
But
if there is written, you will die of hunger.
The torture, the mental torture, the physical
look, this
torture
is in your
that.
fate. This is in your fate. You see, if it is written for you that you will die of hunger, so you will die of hunger. You will die of bullet.
And
you will
there's
die
nothing
of
they can do
accident.
about it.
So
Yes.
it is, I think the problem, it is their approach to the problems. They say this is not our responsibility to provide health facilities to the people because diseases are being cured by the God. Diseases are brought by the God.
There is no need to use
So
your
I think
brain.
there is,
actually.
as for the food is concerned, so the food's responsibility is taken over by the God. It is what the Quran says. So it is their interpretation.
Their own interpretation
Their
of
own
Islam.
I'm
their
not saying,
own-
I'm
their
not
own
saying that
style
this
of
is in Islam like it, but it is their interpretation being from extreme rural background, from not exposed to the modern worlds and modern Islam, political Islam, economic Islam, etc. So it is their belief systems which are keeping them away from the as a welfare state. They are more as an administrative, as what you call it, Amarat, Amir, that he has the commander. You have to obey the Amir. If the Amir say you have to die, you have to die. So you have to live, you have to live. So it is only the Amirs which determine the things for you. So I think the world has, I agree with Madam that she says that it's maybe the UN have thought that let's engage with them. No doubt there are problems, there are human rights violations, women rights violations, all problems are there. But due to, there is no options. You are in a catch-22 situation. So let's engage them on their terms.
Okay.
Maybe they be softened up. But one thing which I have what we call it, the US role is very much important because US is financing Amarat-e-Islami for the last 3 years. It's only the US which has provided so far $17+ billion a year in cash or in other form. So I think US is in a better position to tell them to do certain things or not to do. I think no other countries, including the UN, can't dictate them the terms because they say what you are giving us. So it's the gods which has taken all the responsibility. So we have to obey only the God's order, the divine things, etc.
Your point well taken.
So I think we have to keep that in mind.
Dr. Malik Ahmad, what's your thoughts about Afghan children's plight? Because millions of children required urgent humanitarian assistance, at least one child killed or maimed each day by unexploded ordinances, and children being recruited by Taliban for, unfortunately, for sexual or military purposes. There is 25% rise in child marriages as well, while 50% increase in maternal mortality as well. So how do you see this very dire situation?
Before responding to that question, I just need to correct the figure. Like the CIPRI's global expenditure for last year was 2,443 instead of 4,000, and it was increase of 6.8%. The military expenditure in the last year. Coming to your question, the thing is, as Hassan mentioned about the concept of Imarat, and then to follow the leader. So once like they do not have that in mind, what kind of human rights are, what kind of administration regarding the citizenship is, On the other hand, if we look at, for instance, the Doha talk, Voice of America reports that one of the Western, diplomat stated that, commented that and I'm quoting, that the Afghan delegation members were very competent and their technical know-how was impressive. So it also states that Afghan, like the government know what they need to get and what they do not need to touch completely or avoid completely. Regarding the once we have the situation like the war torn society, the Taliban's concept of education, which have we have been seeing it since 90s, when they took over for the first time, and then it continued. On the other hand, what kind of interpretation of Islam we taught during the 1980s, so it is the extension of that thought and that education which we built in their minds and in their body and soul, that what is the meaning of the education. The education is to participate in jihad. The education is to serve the mujahideen. The education is whatever comes in between, like kufr and Islam. So we need to follow the Islam, and those who are carrying the flags of Islam, those who are carrying the flags of jihad. So every person of the society has to follow what they need of. Even from Europe, this, when the Syrian war was happening, the girls from Europe, they traveled, like to Syria just for marriages with the mujahideen. There is a big report on this, that how many girls and men they travel to Syria for military purposes of those who were fighting over there.
But Dr. Malik Ahmad, that is a separate thing, because but those girls and boys, those were living in Europe or anywhere else, those were brainwashed, and Europe has its own dynamics, its own problems as well. When the people want to get out, they are getting lots of inspiration from the social media and lots of other teachings, and these terrorists and militant organizations, they are using those social medias to recruit people and to have lots of tools to how to brainwash young children. But here the question is that United Nations Office of the Humanitarian Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OSHA, has a clear-cut report that the child labor is on increase. They are saying 19%. On the other hand, the Save the Children says no, it's 38% children involved in child labor. Why a child is enforced to go out and have some sort of a labor to earn something for their family? Either they don't have the male family member, or a widow, or someone there handicapped at home, or might be there, unfortunately everyone is earning very meager to just to have some livelihood. So that's the problem there in Afghanistan, because the poverty level is very high. So how do you see such reports of child labor increasing in Afghanistan because of the poverty there?
Yeah, yes, of course, like there is poverty. There are not many educational institutions established well. They do not have funding, as I mentioned previously, that they need $140 million, but they receive only 40 million, so it is only 28% of the whole budget they need for education only. So once you have that kind of lack of money, like the budget, so of course, like there must be some kind of compromises the Afghan society has to do, or the international organizations, or the international, like the countries who have involved with Afghanistan. As I saw the report, that there are 16 countries which have embassies in Afghanistan. So the thing is, first is, of course, like the Taliban has to see that they could not leave their children without proper education, because this is the children who gonna take over, the political, leadership in a couple of years ahead in future. So if they have that kind of, uneducated, or if they have the education what they have seen during their childhood, so what they're gonna do the same as they have been seeing it now. So this is one thing for the Afghan, like the government. The second is for the international, those who aid, or those who has, pledged to aid for the Afghans humanitarian, help. So they also have to look at that. They need at least to fulfill, their basic needs. This is what OCHA report says, that they are lacking their even basic needs to be fulfilled. and education is one of them. So once there is no education, then what a child gonna do?
Obviously,
Well,
there would be lots of issues
know,
for them if they don't have the
lots of
educated
issues.
base. So, Hassan, what's happening in Afghanistan affecting Pakistan as well? When terrorists bringing their ideology to stop women and girls from education, their participation in mainstream or aggressive propaganda at the social media, which we have seen just a couple of weeks back, is also a recent example. So, some of the schools destroyed recently in North Waziristan as well. How do you see such a situation that is spilling over from Afghanistan?
I think this is very crucial, and especially Pakistan's government has to look at it. It's not only that ideology, but the Taliban system of governance is being, I think, projected as the best one, and especially in the mosque sermon, and especially on Friday, every, if not every second and third mosque, you will hear to the Maulvi sayings that look at what type of Islamic system, their economy is the best of economy, and they don't know the ABC of Afghan economy. They're not aware of what is going on there. And the same is they literally implemented the true Islam. So these are the things which are coming down here, and mostly in the border area, not even in Pakistan. Pakistan is almost an entire tribal society, whether it is in Punjab, southern Punjab, whether it is in interior Sindh, whether it is in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, whether it is in Balochistan. So almost we have 80 to 90% Pakistan society is a tribal society, and the tribal mindset is the same, whether it is he is living in Europe, whether he is living in Asia, whether he is living in Africa. There man is dominant, where man determine the things, and it's a patriarchal society. So the same is coming down, especially across the border. I'm not saying that we need to dislodge or remove the work for removing the Amarat Islami. This is their right. Whether Afghan accept them, okay. If not accept them, it is their problem. But at least Pakistans need to engage the world. Especially, I heard the Prime Minister today when he was at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and he stresses upon it that look, we are talking about development, we are talking of investment, etc. So it is not possible without peace, and without when Afghanistan's, we see Afghanistan from Afghan land, terrorists are crossing on four sides. They are stretching to Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Pakistan, Iran, and China, etc. So he says that look, we have to engage with Kabul. So let's first address this issue. So militancy is the top on the agenda.
Definitely, you are absolutely right. Prime Minister
so I think he has rightly said it.
Loud and clearly
said
that the peace in Afghanistan is inevitable.
Because
if we want to region, if we want region to develop, really. Fajer, how do you see the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan's recent letter to the United Nations Security Council and its member states, and mention numerous incidents of violence and discrimination against women in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, including attacks on girls' schools, ban on women visiting the markets and public spaces, and decrees prohibiting women from participating in national elections, particularly just recently held. So how do you see that letter? Because that is very important.
Just a small
why not?
Most of the decisions have been taken and led by the Maulvis of certain areas.
Unfortunately. Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah. And hence very important to engage with ulamas.
Yes,
and bring them
religious
on the table.
Scholars and all others.
Very important to have them on the table, to have those discussion. And I really believe in the state's writ. And sometimes at issues like this, the state has to establish its writ. What we did see, which was very heartening, very good to see, that when girls' schools, for example, were attacked in North Waziristan, they were very quickly set back up, refurbished, and set up for the girls to come back to school. So the government didn't give in to that. So that is an example. That is something.
That's the brilliant example.
Very and they did exactly the same thing in Diyamar.
Yes.
When the girls' schools were burnt, within 1 week, better schools were established.
Yes, these are the golden example, and we have to definitely highlight that.
But of course, at the same time, I think you have to be able to work at all levels. Engagement is very important at community level, because, for example, like we're saying, that if you have a spillover from Afghanistan, the same mindset, that is where the government of Pakistan needs to keep the communities engaged, especially in the border areas, keep the awareness raising going on, provide education, very important. Give them what that what is required in those communities, because that will make sure that these are communities who are very vulnerable, are not at they're not at risk of being engaged by extremists.
Definitely, definitely. Governments and the state institutions and the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan and all other institutions, they must have to stand by all those vulnerable people.
Just to add, I think, and we may have our own issues and issues that we have to address. I think the state has been taking a stance on everything, and I think that is very, very good, very positive, because the state narrative is clear.
Definitely, definitely. Your point well taken. Dr. Malik, Hammad sir, very brief, very quickly, when the government declared an education emergency under section 504, 505 and 509 of Pakistan Penal Code, do you not think that the such acts like the videos or any content that incite hatred and undermines respect and dignity, a clear violation and liable to have stringent legal actions and punishable offence?
Yes, Faisal. It is, if it is about the hate speech, if it is affecting
about the social media, some of the social media platforms at which some very insightful videos and some short videos were there and the songs were there. I'm referring to that actually.
Yeah. This is whatever in which sense. Either it is a song, it is a TikTok video, it is like the lip singing or something like that. Whatever it comes where the dignity and the human rights of an individual directly or indirectly targeted, or in a society targeted and bringing some kind of hate against one sect, one religion, one group, an individual, it is a dangerous activity, especially in the world of digital media. But the thing is, I would also say that since the Prime Minister has introduced the education emergency, we would also want to see that how quick the PM appoints the full-fledged federal minister on education instead of the part-time job. So that would also I think show that how prominent he is taking this issue regarding the hate speech, regarding the the abuse of any person, any society through any kind of media. Sometimes the mainstream media participates in that kind of activity, which has become quite popular in social media. So the mainstream media also kind of propagates that, either good or bad sense, but they show that. So we have to be very careful regarding these things, and it has to be
absolutely. Ma'am Fajer, you want to say something, but I ask here a question that what actions are actually required to against all those such elements spreading hatred, violence, extremism and even terrorism against the peaceful communities which we are witnessing in our tribal areas, tribal districts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well as in Balochistan as well. So especially against girls, when 12 million girls already out of school, we need to bring all those girls into the schools. So culture of restriction on women and girls and the violence against them is there. So Pakistan can't afford such social terrorism.
No, absolutely not. And let me just, if you don't mind, I'll correct, the number is 14 million now.
It's
not 12 million, sorry.
It is.
And absolutely, I think, the Constitution of Pakistan under Article 25A guarantees education, free and quality education for all children,
obviously,
irrespective of their gender, until the age of 16 years of age education. And I think, first of all, anything like this that we've seen recently on social media, strict action needs to be taken, and I hope strict action is being taken. We have all been engaged on that end, and because that is clearly hate speech that goes against the Constitution of Pakistan,
obviously.
And of course, it's extremely disrespectful. That
it is
extremely disrespectful, and but I think the challenge we have is that these kind of things can influence the mind of a lot of people, and that is the danger that we have something that we've been working for, for years and years to change that mindset, and something like this can come and destroy it and push us back completely.
Definitely, and I wish that more people like you come in the mainstream and they work together for the women's rights and the girls' rights particularly. Hassan, very quickly, very brief, because we have run short of time. So the Afghan Taliban's behavior looks to us that they are behaving irresponsibly. So when it comes to their own people's rights, especially the girls and women, do you think that such behavior really indicates that the world is going to recognize them, or they have to strive for better thing, and UN must have to stress at the Secretary General level that they have to abide by the international law and particularly their own people's right?
Look, Faisal, I think at the moment Taliban have played their ball very well. They are playing on their wicket. There's going to no other one's wicket, and that's the reason for the last 3 years. Now they are, I think, fairly engaged with almost every capital in the world. They are to Moscow, they are into Beijing, they are into Europe, etc., and they are well engaged with the US too. So I think so far publicly they say we don't need it because the world is already engaged with us. So whether they announce it or not, but we are being recognized, and especially when they are called to the Doha as the sole representative of Afghan. So I think this is a big thing. We are talking about women issue, rights issue, or things like it. But the fact is, the world has recognized in Doha 3 Afghan Taliban as the sole representative of Afghanistan. So that is their big achievement. Gradually, you might have heard yesterday, day before yesterday, there was a statement from the Russian ambassador in the UN,
yes,
saying that we are thinking of removing the sanctions
from Afghan Taliban.
Number one, the Kazakhstan has already done it. Chinese are already inching close toward the recognitions, and as other countries are also engaged. Certain South American countries are also now talking about engaging with them, etc. So I think gradually I see for the last 3 years I haven't seen any change in the Taliban's attitude.
But there is a lot of change internationally.
International world seems to be
Giving in?
Yeah,
they are receding.
They are giving spaces gradually. Look, as a Pakistani, today I am saying, yeah, what I have with the Afghanistan, I have to keep my own interest supreme, and my interest is to recognize Afghan Taliban. So I start talking to them. I start talking cross Afghanistan, trans-Afghanistan railway line. I negotiate on the TAPI. I negotiate on Casa 3. I negotiate on things like that.
But the problem is, no doubt, Hassan, we are all sitting here, and Dr. Malik Hammad there at online. We are all Pakistani. Our Pakistan's interests are prime.
So that
no
is
doubt about it.
So the same is like the same is other countries are also thinking.
What happened and on ground in Afghanistan actually affecting Pakistan?
Look,
we are not
short sentence. Look, at the moment Pakistan is hamstrung in a way approaching Kabul through proper channel. The reason is Taliban's major demand is that you recognize us, then we will enter into various agreement. So far you are not formally recognizing us, so how can we ink an agreement with you on anything, whether it is on security, whether it is on economics, whether it is on trade, whether it is on anything. So I think Pakistan seems to be hamstrung here, and Pakistan is thinking, Pakistani officials are thinking, yeah, this is a big hurdle for us. And they are right, Afghan Taliban, as I said, they are very good in disarming the opponents.
We will have more time to discuss that as well, because that was the dire issue when it comes to the women and girls' rights, really, and the juvenile rights as well. So thank you very much, Hassan, for your presence here in the studios. Thank you very much, Ma'am Fajer. Thank you very much for your presence. And thank you very much, Dr. Malik Ahmad, for your presence online. Thank you very much for your time as well. Viewers, as you have just listened to our panelists, it was unfortunate that United Nations, their talks on Afghanistan in Doha, Qatar, and not actually forcefully demanded of the fulfillment of the human rights, particularly the women and girls in Afghanistan. Human rights violations and curbs on Afghan women, girls and children are the prime reasons, might be, why the world is not actually diligently recognizing the Kabul regime as legitimate one. So Afghan Taliban has to think about it, that what their actions actually went wrong, either supporting terrorist elements at their soil to inflict terrorism in any other country, including Pakistan, is the right way, or to support their own people is the real way to might get some genuine international support. It's up to Afghan Taliban interim authority. This is today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.